the only thing then that wipes out the experience of separateness. You follow me? What you are experiencing then is different and different degrees of separateness. Your degree of separateness is decreasing. The degree of separateness that you are experiencing as a human being, right, is less than the degree of separateness that an animal is experiencing, and less than that which a plant is experiencing. Are you following me? Right? And the whole path ultimately leads us to a point where we completely reconnect with totality, what they call cosmic consciousness. Is that right? And the interesting thing you experience when you make that connection is that you are always, at all times, connected with this oneness. There has never been a time in place when you were not connected with this oneness. That, in fact, you are that oneness. That is your real identity. The little ego that you have been identifying with, right? That is not your nature. You are God, literally. You are that oneness. It's an amazing experience, very different. There was never any time that you never was even on a path. You never even meditated. You discover all of this when ego dropped. You were never separate. You never even meditated. You were that which witnessed the meditation. There is something in you, if you can sense it very deeply, that is simply witnessing. Thou art that. It neither meditates, it does no sadhana, it practices no disciplines, it reads no books at all. It is always the case. Now, in Vedanta, for instance, Pam, that you mentioned, the whole discipline of Vedanta is simply to realize this. Non-dualism, as they call it. There is no two. There is no many. There is but the one. But it's such a profound teaching that, you really have to really, spend some time with it. But I want you to begin to understand these things so that you don't become discouraged. So that you don't feel that unless you do this or do that, that you'll never become one with God. That is never the case. It is not even possible. You are already one with God. They asked the Buddha, they said, how do you describe yourself? What are you? You're certainly not like us. And Buddha said, you're right. I am simply awake. I am awake. This whole path is about waking up. Right? And so we have to come up with a very different understanding of ego, because again, when we say, well, I got too much ego, or my ego in the way, what you're talking about is arrogance. What you're talking about is way down, that even if you conquer your arrogance, you will still remain unenlightened. You see what I'm saying? Ego is a very different phenomenon. Very different phenomenon. Now let's pause and take these few minutes that we got left, and let's go into it. If you got questions, let's squeeze it out of it, because I want you to really get this one. Yes, Hana?
So you can actually live your life with no ego?
But you begin to find out that there's two things going on. There's a you. Now, what are you referring to when you say you? What is the reference to you?
If I say me?
Yeah, when you use the word me, what are you referring to?
Well, for the most part, I guess be physically.
Yes, your body physically,
Right.
and things of that nature, right? And things. Now, what I'm saying, that's not the me. That's not the real me in the first place. And the thing that happens is it's just like something that covers light, right? And when that cover will give you the illusion that there's no light. Now, light is there. Like the sun is always shining. Night is an optical illusion. There's never a time when the sun is not shining, is it? Right? It's just that you're not facing it. Hence the experience of the darkness, right? It is not a negation of the existence of life. What I'm simply saying then, that this thing that we call in our ego with the little e is not the negation of the existence of your real self. And in fact, it is to begin to understand this. You see, to understand this is the whole task of the path. Now, the saints realize that most of us don't have that kind of clarity of thinking. So for us, they have given us the practices. But I want you to understand that that is what you're doing when you're practicing. I want you to understand that what is happening during the practice of your meditation and your sadhana is the deconstruction of this sense of self that you're currently clinging to. Right? It will be deconstructed. You will experience some resistance. It will cause you to sabotage yourself. Now this is interesting because you want to begin to look and see in what forms your own resistance manifests itself. Because your resistance will manifest itself. So often people will come and say, well, Bhagwan, this path is just too hard. It's just tearing me up. Maybe just the wrong thing. And I try to remind them, I try to encourage them, when I can, if I can catch them just at the right time, try to remind them that, no, you feel a deep resistance. You enter into the process of change now. Change is finna happen. Some transformation is finna happen. Right? That's why you're experiencing the deep resistance. You see? The resistance is an indication that your sadhana is paying off. You see? Just be a little patient. Keep practicing. You see, the whole name of this game is practicing. It's interesting, I read a statistic, about peak performances, master performances, being at that level where a person has these incredible abilities to function at a high degree of skillfulness. And they were looking at the difference between the master musician, the master violinist, and the average, and then the mediocre, right? And what they found were those people who you could label master musicians or master violinists have an average of 10,000 hours of practice before the age of 20. 10,000 hours of practice before the age of 20. Those who are good enough to get paid and play in the rest of the orchestra, right? They got about 7,500 hours of practice already logged in by the age of 20. It begins to give you a very different ideal, you see. Because on the path, what tends to happen is that we become obsessed with what we want in terms of outcome. We be obsessed with the things that we hope to happen, right? And that takes your attention off the practice. The key to the path is stay focused on the practice. Stay focused on the practice. Don't drift off into this world of your ambitions and goals and I want to have cities and supernatural power when I'm going to be able to read people's minds. You see what I'm saying? And all this other stuff. You see? That will distract you. Unnecessarily distract you. You simply remain focused from the practice. Right? If you want long-term lasting effects, you must have long-term practice. So the key to the path is practice. Practice. And more practice. That's why the masters always say meditation, more meditation, and more meditation. That is the thing that breaks down this barrier of the little ego so that you can move higher. But I want you to understand, though, that this resistance that you experience to the deconstruction and collapse of your sense of who you are is natural. You need not punish yourself. You understand? You need not beat up on yourself. You need not sabotage yourself, flog yourself. I don't believe in flogging. I do not recommend it. You see what I'm saying? When you hit this resistance, you simply understand it and remember and understand that's normal, right? You won't panic now, right? In fact, it'll encourage you, right? You know that I must be getting close. Damn, I don't feel like getting up this morning. That's a good sign, right? That's a good sign. Something is about to happen. You're getting close to something happening now. right? Now just overcome this inertia just a little bit more, and the transformation will happen. Yes, Brother A.
Mine is to offer a comment, and it's not based on any study, and it's just what I've experienced, but I remember a time in my life where I thought the solution to my problems too was to destroy. I hear so many people use that word, destroy, kill the ego, and I sat about an active search for ways to do that. I don't think it was until, you can call this an elaborate rationalization, maybe that may be the case, but I found it easier, or at least when you look at any biological system, or even when you think of the word attack or kill, it seemed to imply a matrix of other thoughts that are associated with it, namely mounting a defense and a battle that will go on and take place over periods of time.
That's right.
I found it much simpler to just embrace this thing that you so want to control and destroy, and convince it. I mean, to me, I found nothing wrong with saying, just think, if you could learn to relate to other people well, to open yourself to a spirit of service, if you could seek to be the very best of things, then you will know the happiness. And there's nothing wrong, I thought, in doing that. And in embracing the ego, you also begin to also, if you just dig, I guess, see your dual aspects of yourself. There is a physical part of yourself, which to me, everything I've seen to find it, you never will destroy the ego. So maybe convince it of the great things that it can acquire in service to mankind and live with that.
Sure.
But there's still a need, because of your dual nature, to transcend this part, and you must get in touch with that other part of yourself, which is permanent and is one with all. And that's your refuge, or that's your strength, and you restore or recharge yourself. Then you get back into the action part of yourself, and you go about taking care of business and building greatness, or dedicating your life to that.
I think
but
that's
it's
a
not
very sane
not
approach
a
to
death. There's no destruction. There's no attacking the ego.
It is no killing it.
All embraced.
No,
it is
you are
all embraced.
you are subsuming it.
And it will.
See, that's what happened in the hierarchical movement. You don't lose the lower abilities; they're subsumed. It's becoming, you become first instincts plus body, then instincts and body plus emotion, then instincts, body, and emotion plus thinking, so forth. You become ego plus, right? There's a plus added to it, right? You don't lose any of these capacities at all. You will still have ego, but you have something plus ego. So when we talk about transcending, even that's a misunderstanding, because we continually think about that the thing that was wrapped beneath it ceased. It does not, it's subsumed, right? It is integrated into the higher organ, right? And you know that, Brother Ray, as a biologist, as a chemist, right? When we talk about atoms, right, combining, right, and then becoming a molecule, their molecules combine on a macro level and become cells. Cells combine and become organelles and so forth and so on, all the way up to the level of a solar system, right? But at the level of a solar system, that does not mean that atoms went out of existence. They're still there, aren't they? So are the cells, right? So are all of the things, right? They're still in existence. And the interesting thing is that even if you reverse the process, right? If you eliminate, let's say if a cell collapses, right? If cellular structure breaks down, there's still atomic structures, right? It's full fundamental.
Can I make one other comment about
Sure.
that, too? And that was a revelation that came when researching the history of this discovery of organic chemistry. And I don't know if we've talked about this before, but it's that prior to the discovery of organic chemistry, man never thought he could duplicate chemical processes that go on in the body, and it was vital for blah, blah, blah. But they had done a lot of studying, and originating, I guess, in alchemy and turning lead to gold, and familiar with how the elements and how to manipulate things that were of an inorganic nature.
Yes.
But when you discover and to do in the chemistry of inorganic matter is basically big atoms going around finding big atoms, taking
right,
to make themselves whole. The atoms are not. They're motivated to become whole. They're not satisfied. So they go around gangbanging.
That's right.
I teach the gangbanging theory of
the
molecular
gangbanging theory of
combinations.
physics.
Okay.
I like that. Very appropriate for Malcolm
Then you
X.
hit, that's true. Then you hit organic chemistry.
Yes.
And you find that instead of taking atoms are just simply sharing. And of the thousands of things that you can, combinations you can come up at an inorganic level, when you get to sharing, and atoms get to share, millions. I mean, there's still things they haven't discovered that are just simply based on the principle of sharing. That is our nature, it seems, to share. We are organic, we're made up of organic atoms.
Sure.
And when you recognize that and you try and commit yourself
Sure.
to realizing that
Sure.
innocence, then things,
Sure.
yeah, I think you're working in harmony with it.
Well, that's the point. Is that the nature of reality, the ontological reality, that all things that exist tend toward a hierarchy, I call it, wholeness, and higher levels of organization. So there's a hierarchy then, as opposed to just a hierarchy, right? It is a movement in a hierarchical direction toward wholeness. Consciousness does the same thing. Consciousness is evolving to become more whole, more inclusive. That's the whole thing. And when this evolution reaches its ultimate point, right, that generates the experience of enlightenment. But the point I want to stress is that these things are not occurring in time. It's not sequential. It's not like this is going to occur in the future. It is already the case. You see, and it's a real subtle thing. You follow me, Brother Aiken? But it's a real critical thing to understand, is that it is already the case. What I'm trying to convince you folks is that you are already enlightened. You are already a Buddha. Don't approach your sadhana like I'm doing something to make me a Buddha. No. You are already a Buddha. Your meditation and your sadhana is simply removing the obscurations to that realization. That's what it is. And that changes the whole flavor of the practice now. You see my point? Yes, Brother Atuchi.
Bhagwan, since the feeling of separateness is just an illusion, then when we get into these attachments, what are we trying to attach to, since there's nothing, since we're all, it's all already.
Sure. What we're attached to are those things that make up our sense of me, makes up the sense of self. You become automatically attached to them. Those become components in your state of homeostasis. You understand? Because now you have involved a sense of identity that is inclusive of more things. There was a time, Bharataji, when your sense of self was not made up of your possessions or your relationship with people. You were very self-centric, very turned in on yourself. And so your sense of self, your attachment was only to your body. And even before it was even lower. It was just to food, you see, and the satisfaction of your drives and instinct. But as the sense of self goes on evolving, it expands, right, and becomes more inclusive of component parts. And the attachment is almost automatic. The attachment is really what? The inability to change. Attachment is fundamentally a resistance to change. Attachment is an expression of the homeostatic state in terms of your psychological experience. Much like a thermostat in this room, right? We have it, and we can set a temperature on it, right? And then when the temperature in the room drops below that which we set on the thermostat automatically sends a signal to a heater, right? That kicks on and rebalances the temperature. And once it hits balance again, then it shuts itself off. You have a feedback loop. Well, it's kind of like a feedback loop that makes up your whole being, except that they're in the trillions. It's an incalculable number of them, right? And the whole ideal is to maintain your sense of self, right? To maintain sense of self, right? And that's a very important thing. You have to understand. Homeostasis has its legitimate function, so I don't want to give it a bad name. You can imagine the danger of your body being allowed to fluctuate by 10 degrees just randomly. It'll kill you, right? So there's like thermostats in the body at the level of the skin, thousands, millions of them, right? That when the temperature drops and you start getting cold, right? They kick on, right? And you'll find that the whole metabolism of the body changes. You even start shivering to generate more heat and so forth and so on. Because the body is striving to maintain equilibrium, homeostasis. So in the same way we're trying to do that in terms of the ego system with a little lowercase e. Your ego, lowercase e, is nothing but this kind of conscious